Hey, well, hello everybody. Matt over at Safari Peak. Glad you could join me today. This is one of my favorite webinars to do because I'm kind of a technology nut. I love technology. I love computers. I started using computers back in 1985. I got my first computer. It was a leading edge Model D. It was like an XT running at 4.77 megahertz, slow. It had two 5.25 inch floppy drives, no hard drive. So, but I was just enamored with the technology, and I have been ever since. I love computers, absolutely love technology. So I love doing this webinar. So I love talking to you guys about technology and trying to impart some of my wisdom that I've accumulated over the years to help you guys figure out, figure out the best computer and technology for you guys to use. And we're going to kind of focus on purchasing a new computer today. We can also get into some photography aspects of things, tethering and using internet in the field, different types of internet for your home or home office, whatever you guys want to talk about. I'm going to let you guys kind of dictate where we take it from here. So that being said, the way that you can talk to me is using the chat that is built into YouTube. So as long as you're signed into YouTube with a Google account, over on the right-hand side here by default, you will see a chat area that you can chat with me and go ahead and put something in there, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have, or you can kind of push the discussion in a direction that you want to take it in. I also want to let you know that in the lower right-hand corner over here, there's going to be a couple of buttons, one of which is like two brackets. If you click on that, it's going to go full screen so you can see everything a little bit better, but just be aware that if you do that, then you won't be able to see the chat. And I'm talking about if you're on a desktop or a laptop. If you're on a mobile device, it works a little bit different. If you're even watching this on a television using a Roku or a smart TV or whatever, a little bit different there. But if you click on the little brackets, it'll go full screen. If you click on the little elongated rectangle, that will make it go larger. It's called theater mode. It'll make the video go larger so it's easier to see. And then the text, the chatting will be put down below underneath the video so you can ask questions there. All right. So until you guys ask any questions, what I'm going to kind of go over here are what I recommend for purchasing a new computer and using it with Appraise-It Pro. This will also apply to Appraise-It Classic as well, but I'm going to kind of focus more on Appraise-It Pro. All right. So let's take a look at the recommended specs for a computer. Now, these are my recommendations. So just keep that in mind. I tend to not be kind of bougie, I guess I would call it, with my computers. So I try to get the best value, to get that best deal. Okay. So none of these specs are going to break the bank. So we're going to look at processor, RAM, storage, keyboard, and connections. So the processor, I love the AMD Ryzen 5 processor, but it's basically the equivalent of an Intel Core i5. Both are great processors. The AMD Ryzen processor line tends to be slightly faster than the Intel processors, and they tend to be cheaper, which is always good. The other thing is that with the Ryzen 5, the Ryzen processors, you're going to get faster. You're going to get better graphics because AMD, the chip maker, they bought Radeon quite a few years ago, maybe 15 years ago now. They bought Radeon, and so they incorporate that into their what's called system on a chip. So what I'm giving you are both the specs I would recommend for either a desktop or a laptop. Laptops tend to be more popular nowadays. And so I'm going to focus on laptops, and I'll tell you why here in a minute. Because of the way that laptops work, you can easily turn them into a desktop replacement. So I'll go over that here in a little bit. But for either form factor, I do recommend either a AMD Ryzen 5 or an Intel Core i5. And going back to that graphics that I was talking about, these are all going to be using what's called system on a chip. And what that basically is the processor isn't just the processor anymore. The processor is also going to have the graphics processing, and your I/O, your input output stuff is all going to be now on the processor. It handles all of that stuff. And the cool thing about the AMD processors, the Ryzen processors, is like, because they bought Radeon a while back, they include the Radeon graphics on their system on a chip. So you're going to get better graphics performance. Intel knows this. That's why they've been coming out with both their Iris platform and their, what do they call the other one? I forget what they call it. Oh, their Evo platform, which is kind of trying to answer that for the AMDs. But, you know, if you're not going to be gaming on these things, if you're not going to be editing video, you're just going to be using Appraise-It Pro. It doesn't really matter all that much, but I do kind of like the AMD Ryzen's a little bit better. They're just cheaper, you know? And if, when you're looking, one of the things you'll need to know is they have both brought their model numbers into parity. So the Intel Core line of processors that have been out for a couple years now started the Intel Core i3. That is aimed at the home market. The Core i5 is aimed at the home office and the business market. The Core i7 is aimed at the gaming market and people that need a little bit extra horsepower. Case in point, my desktop here has a Core i7 on it because I edit video on it. So I need a little bit extra horsepower. And then there's the Core i9, which is aimed strategically, like definitely at gamers. Okay. On the AMD side, they've come into parity with their models. So a Ryzen 5 is basically like a Core i5. A Ryzen 3 is like a Core i3. A Ryzen 7 is like a Core i7, et cetera, et cetera. So that makes things a whole lot easier. So you kind of know what class of computer you're dealing with here. So we're going to call it a class 5 computer. That'd either be a Ryzen 5 or a Core i5. Moving into RAM. Now, don't confuse RAM with storage, completely separate. And it's kind of, sometimes it can be a little bit easy to confuse the two because now that we have solid state storage, it's chip-based storage. So a lot of people get, RAM and storage confused. We're talking about RAM, random access memory. That is basically where the processor stores things that it's going to be working on immediately. So it's just kind of like the working space. So if you have a kitchen analogy, the cook is the processor, and then the counter space is the RAM. So you always want to have as much counter space as possible. When you go into a house, of course, more counter space is more desirable. So think of RAM as the counter space. 8 gigabytes in this class is what you are going to see most often. Sometimes you can see 12, and sometimes you can see 16. You can never have enough RAM. Get as much RAM as you can afford. But 8 gigs is what you're going to mostly notice, and that is what I would recommend for using Appraise-It Pro. 8 is going to be more than enough for what you're doing with it. Storage. We used to have hard drive based storage, and that is mechanical storage. That is a mechanical spinning hard drive, and that was slow and less reliable, frankly. But it was cheap. We perfected hard drive technology a very long time ago, but it was slow and it was less reliable. It's moving parts. It's actually a bunch of little fiddly metal bits spinning really fast in a vacuum, because inside that hard drive case was a vacuum. So lots of opportunity for things to go wrong. Now we have chip-based storage. It's called solid state drive, SSD. So HDD is going to be your abbreviation for hard disk drive, and SSD is going to be your abbreviation for solid state drive. Pretty much anything that you're going to see on the shelves now in 2023 is going to have only an SSD. There was a time where we were doing hybrid computers where there was an SSD for holding the operating system, and then you'd have a hard drive for storing things. Pretty much now everything is moved solely over to SSD. Okay. So, but if you're looking for an older computer on the secondhand market, watch out for the HDD, the hard disk drive. You don't want that. You're going to want to, at the very least, if you buy a used computer, upgrade it to a solid state drive. Keyboard. This is very important because at the heart of it, what do you guys do? You are typists, because that's what you do all day long. You're typing on your computer. So it's very important you guys have a good keyboard that you are happy with. If you're getting a desktop, you're probably going to want to buy a separate keyboard and not use the one that comes with your computer, because they're kind of garbage. So I would when you go into Best Buy, when you go into Office Depot, or when you go into Staples, go in there. Don't buy things blindly off of Amazon, even though the price may look very appealing to you. Go in and actually use the keyboards, try them out. Now remember, when you're typing on them, you have muscle memory that is geared towards whatever your current keyboard is. So you're going to make some mistakes and it's going to feel a little weird. That's going to go away within a week or two. What you really want to look at is, how do those keys feel? Do they feel clicky? Are they comfortable to type on? And then the other big thing is, you're going to want to make sure that you get a laptop, if you go with a laptop, that is above 15.6. So it's going to be a 16-inch class laptop. That's where you're going to find that 10 key. So you guys know what a 10 key is. That's the number pad on the right-hand side of the keyboard. So make sure that whatever laptop you get has that 10 key on the right-hand side, because you guys are entering a lot of numbers and you're going to want that 10 key. And also, type on it and see, is the keyboard mushy? Is there a lot of flex in the keyboard, or is it nice and solid? And if you are going to get a desktop, find a separate third-party, separate keyboard that you can purchase. You're probably going to want to look at a mechanical one. Mechanical ones are the clicky ones like we used to have back in the 80s that feel really nice to type on. So make sure you have good key travel, that when you push, you're not going to accidentally hit something, or when you hit it, it doesn't actually work. We don't want those mushy, cheap keyboards. And finally, we're going to talk about connections. In the desktop space, this isn't as important as it is in the laptop space. So what I mean by connections is, on a laptop, you are going to have a series of USB ports. You may have noticed, especially if you use Android, you may have noticed a shift away from USB-A, which is this. This is USB-A. This is the USB that we've had for many, many, many years. You may have seen a switch from that over to USB-C. And this is USB-C. So if you have an Android phone, you are very familiar with what USB-C is. Great thing about USB-C, it can be used either way. You can insert it either way into the computer. Okay? But the other big thing about USB-C is the amount of data that you can slam down these pipes is pretty crazy. We're talking gigabits and gigabits of data that you can put down the pipe on this. Also, the power delivery. You can do up to, I think you can deliver, depending upon the cable that you have, you can deliver something like 12 up to 24 volts at over 100 watts down one of these cables. And that's really important when you're needing to, say, charge your laptop, because a lot of laptops now come with USB-C based chargers. Now, they're going to come with a big old brick and a big old cord that is not very convenient to carry around. So what you can do is you can actually go out to, do I have one? I don't have one handy. I think it's on the other side of the room. But you can go out to Office Depot or Best Buy or Staples or even Amazon, and you can get a 65 watt, a 75 watt, 100 watt, 90 watt, whatever, power brick that's very small, because they use these gallium nitride technology now, the way they make these 100 watt power supplies that are really small, that have power delivery. You'll see PD on there. That you can use along with just a regular USB-C cable to charge your laptop or run your laptop when you're out in the field. So that's kind of the beauty of USB-C. But the other big thing about USB-C is, if your laptop has the USB-C cable on it, you can purchase something like this. So this is from Anker. You can buy this on Amazon. You can also go into Best Buy or Staples or places like that, and you can find ones there too. But these Anker ones, anything from Anker, you guys probably already know this, anything from Anker is fantastic, and I absolutely love this. So what is this? This little box has a USB-C little pigtail on it. And in this, if I plug this into my laptop, my company laptop, which does have USB-C, instantly it gives me 2 USB-A ports on this side. And then over here on this side, it gives me a USB-C port over here. And then it's also going to give me a card reader. And in this one, it's going to give me an HDMI port. What does this mean? Well, if you think about it, what I can do is I can plug in my extra monitor, my second monitor, into the HDMI. I can also plug in my keyboard and my mouse in here. And if some of these have 3 USB ports on them as well, so that I can plug in maybe a printer, although most printers are wireless now. And then I also get this little USB-C port here. This is a input. So I can actually plug in my charger for my laptop into here. And this essentially becomes a tiny little docking station. So I can just keep this on my desk, and then, I can pull the memory card out of my camera and put it in there. Keep this on my desk, plug in the USB-C port cable when I get back into the office, and then magically, all of a sudden, I have my external monitor, my external mouse, and my external keyboard, and it starts charging the computer. So just with one plug, I've now connected it as if it's a desktop. That's why I recommend purchasing a laptop, so that you have that flexibility to go on vacation and be able to still work if you need to. You still have that flexibility to work from anywhere in the city if you happen to be out and about and taking photos and you need to do something. You got your entire Appraise-It Pro. Everything is there, right there for you. And you can just stop in at a Starbucks or a McDonald's, get some Wi-Fi, do what you need to do, and then move on, or tether it to your phone as well. So you can have internet, right there in your car. One of our users, Bill Cobb out of Baton Rouge, he's always doing the latest tech, and he had a great idea. You can go on Amazon. You can also go to Best Buy, and you can find these as well. These little trays that will lock onto your steering wheel and actually give you kind of like a tray table on an airplane, and you can actually sit there in your car and listen to the radio, have the air conditioning running, have the heat running, and do your work and tether it to your phone and basically have a completely mobile office. He's huge on this whole mobile office thing. All right, so with all that being said, let's put that right back in case you didn't see it. We're going to be processor, AMD Ryzen 5 or Intel Core i5, RAM at least 8 gigs, more the better. Storage at least 256 gigabytes of solid state storage, more is better. Sometimes you'll see 512 out there and even a terabyte. Don't be confused. Like don't let them try to sell you on, oh, well, this has a terabyte of storage, but then you come to find out it's a hard disk drive. Stay away from that. It's better to have the fast storage. The SSD, the solid state drive, is such a big deal in technology right now that it basically takes the boot up time of Windows. So on a hard drive, and if you have a hard drive in your older system, you know this, it can take 2, 3, maybe even 4 minutes sometimes to get into Windows, have it all booted up so that it is ready to go. Solid state drive, you'll be looking at about 20 seconds or less from hitting that power button to being in Windows ready to use it. Solid state drives are probably the biggest advancement in technology as far as our perceived speed of the computer in decades. So definitely solid state drive, except no alternatives. We're also looking at the 10 key. Make sure you have the 10 key on the keyboard, and then finally that USB-C, and make sure it has USB 3.1. If it has USB-C, it's going to be a USB 3.1. Pretty much anything on the market today is only going to have USB 3.1. But what that is, that's the version of USB that it's going to use. And, obviously USB 3.1 is going to be much faster than the older USB 2.0 or even the slightly younger USB 3. So pretty much everything out there now is going to be USB 3.1. And remember, you can still have the USB-A and still have the USB 3.1. Okay, so you're going to start seeing over the next year, I think USB-A ports are going to start disappearing on computers. Apple already does that. Apple does not have USB-A ports on their Macintoshes anymore. But I think you're going to start seeing that in the PC world as well. By the way, question I often get, can you run Appraise-It Pro on a Mac? The answer is yes, but with some asterisks. If it's an older Mac that has the Intel chips, an Intel Core i5 or an Intel Core i7, then yeah, all you need is a program called Parallels, and you'll be able to run Appraise-It Pro like natively in a window next to all of your other Mac programs. What it basically does is it runs Windows 10 or Windows 11 in parallel with Mac OS, and it runs great. Now, the newer Macintoshes that have the M1 and the M2 processor, that processor architecture is different. It's called ARM, which stands for Acorn research machine. Anyway, ARM is the type of processor that you have in your phone or your tablet. So those Snapdragon processors, the A line of processors that are in the lower end iPads, the A processors that are in the iPhones, those are all ARM based. ARM processors are really good at computational power, but also electrical power efficiency. So battery use is you get longer battery life with them. So we at SFREP were about to release a ARM compatible version of Appraise-It Pro. So what that will allow you to do is when you get parallels for a newer Macintosh that's running either the M1 or the M2 processor or the M2 Pro or the M2 Max, whatever, when it's running one of those processors, you'll be able to run Appraise-It Pro, what they call bare metal, which is you're running it in parallels, but it's running directly on the processor. It's not having to mimic a different type of processor. It's running bare metal right there on that processor. To my knowledge, we're the only software vendor that's going to be able to do that. So we're going to have really, really, really good performance in Appraise-It Pro running under a Mac. So that opens up the ability for those of you who want to, you can buy a Mac and run Appraise-It Pro on it. So yes, we can run on a Macintosh. However, let's take a look at what is available out there in the wild. So here we're looking at the Best Buy website, and let's just kind of see what you can get for what type of price. So, I mean, if you want to spend, over $1,000, you can get some great specs. You're looking at a Core i7, 16 gigs of memory, and a 512 half terabyte solid state drive. But I can guarantee you that this computer, also being, what is this, a 14-inch? This computer is not going to have the best battery life. Here you're trading off battery life for a powerful computer. This is a desktop class computer for sure. $1,000, that's a lot of money, but it's a business expense. We'll move down here and check this out. This is actually a sale that's going on right now. $430. You get a 16-inch class touchscreen. You get a Core i5, 12 gigs of RAM, and 256 gigs of SSD storage. I love almost everything about this laptop, with one key exception. Now, this is a pet peeve of mine. Some people don't care. However, one of the things I don't like about this laptop is that the keys are the same color as the case. And I don't know, these keys aren't backlit, and I like to have a contrast between the body of the computer and the keyboard. It just makes it easier, I think, for our older eyes to be able to see. But spec-wise, that would be a solid choice for a computer. You're under $500 for some great specs. Usually in this price range, you would only see 8 gigs of RAM. This one has 12. Lenovo, I absolutely love Lenovo. Chinese company, if you've never heard of them, they're actually based in North Carolina where I am. They're based in Raleigh, the Research Triangle Park. And if you've never heard of Lenovo bought IBM's computer division back in 2005. So these are basically IBM computers. As a matter of fact, they continued some of the trademarks, this one being called the IdeaPad, which was an IBM trademark. And then they also have the ThinkPads, which were also IBM computers. So if you've ever wondered, wait a minute, I thought ThinkPads were made by IBM. They're now made by Lenovo. And if you have a Motorola phone, also Lenovo. They own a lot of stuff. This one is a Core i3, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of SSD storage. But look at this, we're only at $350. Stellar deal. Yeah, it's a Core i3. I'd like to see something a little bit more powerful, but a Core i3 would certainly run Appraise-It Pro just fine. You got your 8 gigs of RAM. You got your 256 gigs of storage. You got a touchscreen, 16-inch class. You got the contrasting keys on the keyboard. I know that these Lenovo keyboards are very nice. They feel good. This will be a solid choice, even though we're a little bit low on the processor. Appraise-It Pro is not like, you're not gaming or anything. You're not going to be really hammering this processor any. What do you get for $850? We're looking at Core i7, so we're above that Core i5 threshold. We're looking at half a terabyte of SSD and 16 gigs of memory. So if you're thinking, wow, that seems like the stats I was getting up here over $1,000, well, it is. Up here, you're at a Dell, over $1,000 with the same specs. I would go here and I would do this. I would do this HP and save yourself a little bit of money. By the way, guys, if you have any questions about anything technology related, just let me know. The other thing I do want to give you, and I encourage you to kind of go in here and look at these on your own. I don't want to spend too much time doing this, but there's some great deals going on right now. And especially if you can wait until we get into the back to school time. So like later on in the summer, there are going to be some great computer deals that can be had. The other thing I want to do is I do want to give you my, no, hold on. We'll go back to this, but here, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. And I don't generally put these on the screen because algorithms can grab them and then put me on lists, but I'm going to give you my telephone number. This is my office telephone number. You can call me, but a lot of times I don't answer the telephone because I put it on mute because I'm working on videos or something like that. And of course, I'm not going to answer it after hours. However, what I will do is I will answer text messages after hours. And we have a great internet-based phone system that we use because all of us are scattered around because we closed down all of our offices during COVID. Now we all work from home. This is my home behind me. So what we have are these internet-based phone systems. And one of the cool things is I can send and receive text messages from it. And they do come through on my phone. So let me give you my number here because what you can do is you can use my number and you can be more than welcome to contact me via text message if you have any questions while you're out at the local Best Buy, at the local Staples, looking at computers. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. My number here, make sure you jot it down, is area code 828-919-9082. That's 828-919-9082. You can also, of course, feel free to email me training@sfrep.com and I can answer any questions that you have, especially if you're watching this after the fact. If you're watching the replay of this, feel free to go ahead and email me as well. But 828-919-9082, when you're actually in the store, you can send me pictures of what you're looking at and I can answer any questions with you, give you some suggestions, let you know if it's a good deal or not. I'd be happy to do that. So if any of you have any questions, go ahead and get them now. Otherwise, then feel free now or after the fact if you have any questions, 828-919-9082 or training@sfrep.com, and I will be happy to answer them for you. Thank you so much for showing up. I really appreciate it. I always love talking with you guys and interacting with you guys. Feel free to email me, feel free to text me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions and give you the guidance that you need. Even if it's related to photography, I'm an amateur photographer, so I can answer questions about that. Whether you're taking your property photos with your camera, with your cell phone, I can also give you tips on how to get those off of your cell phone. And we do have some training coming up. If you go to our website and you click on, you mouse over training, go to the training calendar, you'll be able to see what we are going to be offering coming up. And I know that one of the webinars that we have coming up is going to be one on dealing with photos in Appraise-It Pro. So you may want to check that out as well. Thanks a lot, guys. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a rest of your weekend. And always have an awesome